All right, Harry. Matthew chapter 5, right? Jesus is doing the Sermon on the Mount, and he comes to an interesting point where he talks about the fulfillment of the law. It's in verse 17. We're going to read this, and I'm just going to ask you some questions. So, verse 17, do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Why did Jesus even bring that question up in the first place?
Yeah, you wonder about that, eh? Because I don't know if anybody presented that question, but I think Jesus wanted to present it in the Sermon on the Mount because this is kind of his mission statement, and he wanted to make sure that all the things were covered, that he actually has a project, and that is to fulfill the law. And he want and see by the when Calvary comes, that the Old Testament will be fulfilled, will be completed. And so he didn't come to abolish it. He just wanted to finish it and put it into, so it's complete.
All right, sounds good. Verse 18, for truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, nor the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. What does Jesus mean by that?
Yeah, so the teachings of Moses and the prophets and all those people that they had to be adhered to right at this time. They had to be adhered to all along for the last 1500 years, and even yet, right now, they had to be adhered to. It was completely important that the teaching that they were obedient to the laws of God, the Ten Commandments, all those things were all very relevant, and obedience to them was important until everything is accomplished. And accomplished was what Jesus was going to do, because when Calvary came and the curtain was torn, then it was accomplished. But until then, you had to be obedient to those teachings completely.
All right, verse 19. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these command and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Can we get an example of one of these commands?
Yeah, well, as an example, in Mark 7:11, there's a term called Corban, and so what the priesthood had done, they had allowed people an escape clause of taking care of their parents. So very important to take care of your parents is one of the main laws. But they said if it's going to cost you say $50,000 to take care of your parents till they die, what you could do is dedicate that money to the temple or to the priesthood, and then you wouldn't have to take care of your parents. And so they had changed the rules so that this could be accomplished, and of course bring more funds to them, and that the parents worry about themselves. And gee, that's an example of a pretty bad one, but that was one of the rules they had done. And Jesus says, whoever sets aside one of these commands and teaches it will be the least in the kingdom. I mean, this is horrible stuff. And then he says, but anybody that teaches you to do the commands and be obedient to them, he says, praise God for that. That is what's expected
Mhm.
from you.
All right. And verse 20. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Where do we find our righteousness then today?
Yeah, well, the righteousness, because these people were misleading the people about the law. And Matthew 28, verse 20, spoken after Calvary, Jesus tells us where we can get our righteousness today. So when Jesus died on the cross, the veil of the temple, the curtain of the temple was torn from top to bottom. So what is accomplished at that time were several things. One is he finished the Old Testament, which we're talking about here, so it's completed. But Jesus also accomplished instated the New Testament. And then Matthew 28:20 was spoken after Calvary, what Jesus gave us instruction that said that we are to now be obedient to all his commands. Even though Jesus taught those commands before Calvary, after Calvary, it says, hey, the old commandments are done, the new commandments are in. And I know we talk about grace and so on, and grace is true. We have to have grace to be saved, and by the grace of God, and grace with Calvary is by the grace of God. So many things are by grace, But we also have to participate in the teachings of Jesus. Those commands are relevant to us today. So we do not want to, if we aren't obedient to them, we're no better than the Pharisees, because they found ways around things. And we too have to be obedient to, our righteousness has to be more than that. And we have to be obedient to the teachings of Jesus. And they were instated and certified after the cross. And Jesus made that clear to us at that time.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you.